we got the news, Will Whitson announcing his intentions to return to Mississippi State. Now, officially, they still have got to get his waiver approved for a 6 year of eligibility. But Mississippi State is incredibly confident that'll happen. It should happen, considering that he played in 1.5 games this year and only played 4 games a season ago at Coastal Carolina. You should get him back. And what he showed in that short time, 1.5 games. It's not even 2 games. It's 1.5. 8 tackles, 4.5 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, which no one else in the defensive front came close to matching that type of production on a per-game basis. He still finished, I believe, second on the team in sacks. Yeah, tied for second with Calvin Dinkins. Nick Mitchell led the way with 2.5. Also tied with DJ Reed, who had 2 sacks as well. But the guy played 1.5 games. It was a half sack behind the team lead in sacks. So what he showed in that short amount of time was a big-time disruptor along the defensive line. Now, look, to be fair, it's one of those games at Southern Miss. He was fantastic against Arizona State, but Arizona State's pass defense, Arizona State's pass protection was not great last year, so maybe that's something that would look a little bit different as the season went along. Is he as dominant SEC play? I don't know. But I feel very confident in saying he would not have been I'm going to say would not have been worse. I think he would have been better than a lot of the guys you were running out there, and could have been the difference in Mississippi State being better on the defensive side of the ball. So getting him back is big. Then you have Jerron Manning at safety, who you talked about, State having a safety lead the way in tackles last year. Yeah, Jerron Manning, who led the team with 85 tackles on the season. He had an interception, had 3 tackles for loss, had 4 passes broken up. Was a really solid player for Mississippi State in the secondary. He talked about earlier this week in the bowl game press conferences that they're exploring getting another year of eligibility for him because he was a former JUCO player, and as we had the situation last year with Diego Pavia, Pavia argued that JUCO guys should be able to still have another year of eligibility. Your JUCO time should not count against your time playing in NCAA football. So that was like a temporary agreement that was made last year. It's how State was able to get Devon Booth back for another season. It is not something that is an official ruling. And that is something that is still going to be taken to the court, still be figured out. So we don't know for sure if it's going to pass. But if it does, State could then have Jerron Manning back in the secondary. And having a veteran like that at safety, who is a solid player, is a good thing for you. Feels like there's a good chance you get Kelly Jones back at corner. And I know there's, Mel Kiper talking about him as one of the top corners available in the draft, and being a guy that could be a first-round pick, potentially this coming up spring in the draft. But the word seems to be that Kelly Jones kind of been told, hey, you're better off going and getting another year of development. Like, we'd like to see another year before we put our chips in on you being a true elite cornerback prospect that we're going to pay first-round money for. If you come back to school and you have a year, I imagine what Kelly Jones has been told, and this is not official. Kelly Jones has not said he is returning. I know he put out that Instagram post that kind of made it seem like he's coming back, but officially we've not received word Kelly Jones is back. But what I imagine Jones was told is like, hey, this year was awesome. Give us one more year like that, and you will be a first-round pick, no question about it. Whereas if you go this year, you're probably going day 2, which is still going to be really good money. But if you can play your way into being a first-round pick, you want to have that opportunity. So it kind of sounds like Kelly Jones might be back. We don't know for sure. Again, this is not official. But if you get him back, okay, well, then we're talking about having a lockdown corner. And then you talk about Isaac Smith, who I know State, he's, they're going to have to get things figured out and make sure that they can pay him to keep him back. But if you have Isaac Smith returning, there's another veteran at safety who's been such a great player for you over the past couple seasons. So I think fits that role of a middle safety in the Zach Arnett defense really well. The dog safety, as Arnett called it. I think it'd be outstanding in that role. So if we're talking about, we got a good defensive lineman, good pass rusher, disruptive player, Will Whitson. You've got, and this is if everything aligns, if all of this comes together, disruptive defensive lineman in Whitson. You've got a lockdown corner in Kelly Jones, 2 veterans at safety in Isaac Smith and Jerron Manning. Then you look at the linebacker room. Zachary Tillman, Jalen Smith, Darian Gillette, Tyler Lockhart. Very promising young group of linebackers. A lot of guys who have shown you some really solid play. There's a lot of talent in that group. Guys like Tillman and Lockhart specifically have shown some disruptive ability and some great ability to go make plays in the backfield, which I think is something that gets you really excited over. Oh, that could be something there. You feel like those are guys that could thrive playing for Zach Arnett, who's had a lot of success in the linebacker position. So you think you've got good talent in that linebacker room. And then I look at some of the other defensive linemen coming back. DJ Reed, Jere Bledsoe, Calvin Dinkins, Trevion Williams. Those are all solid defensive linemen. They all showed flashes this year. And do you want to roll with them as your starters next season? Probably not. But that's a solid group you can work with. And if those are your number two guys, that's great. Which, by the way, there's nothing that says a guy like Calvin Dinkins could finally put it all together and be that dominant, disruptive defensive tackle, nose tackle for State. So I feel good. I think you've got some good depth pieces there at defensive line. You're bringing in Braylon Womack, who's a 5-star player in the secondary that I think is going to be an impact player right away at safety, who I think could be a coverage player for you playing that nickel role, if not middle of the field safety. You know, Micah Nickerson, is he going to get big enough, strong enough to be a premier pass rusher right away? I don't know. But that's a talented guy coming in. Tyshawn Willis was a guy that I think there was some thought of him being an instant impact player for Mississippi State last year. Can he finally be that breakthrough guy who didn't really play as a true freshman, but after redshirting, is he going to have the size to go and be a disruptor as that stand-up edge rusher, Sam linebacker in the Arnett defense? There's some promising young talent. There are some veteran solid players. There's a couple guys who look like high-level players, all coming back. I kind of potentially, I said all coming back. Again, I have to keep saying potentially. This could all end up like maybe Kelly Jones declares, Jerome Manning, it isn't official. Whitson doesn't get a ruling. Isaac Smith transfers. Like, if all the terrible stuff happens, okay, this is a different story. But if all of these things happen for State and they get every positive outcome, you have the bones of potentially a really exciting defense, and then would start. Zach Arnett is calling the defense, which you feel a lot better about than what you've had the past couple seasons. I think they would then be a few pieces away in the portal where if you go and you hit on a few pieces, you could really be talking about a good defense in Starkville next season. And I can get to what they're going to have to go after here just in a sec. But Christian, tell me I'm not completely crazy here, that if all of these things happen, or even most of them, I think there's individual reasons to be excited about this defense, and coming together, you can have a group that takes a big step forward next year.
No doubt. And again, not to jump too far into the Mayo Bowl for Mississippi State against Wake Forest, but part of not to get too far into it, but I feel like part of my breakdown is that's going to be a key game. Is who do you want to put out there on defense? Are you going to have guys opt out? We still got time between now and then where guys could decide not to play if possible, or if they wanted to. Let me say it like that. That's just going to be a key game that is going to make or break Mississippi State, or not like make or break them, but it in a positive way defensively. If it's a good game, it'll give you a preview of next year. I would hope. I would hope we play some young guys that potentially come back. You mentioned Zach Arnett returning, um, for being the defensive coordinator coming back. Proven success, obviously out there. Will Whitson, um, on the defensive line. Braylon Womack, the 5-star. Is he going to be a immediate impact freshman? I think that's a big question. A lot of people love what he's done in high school. A lot of people are hoping that you put a guy out there like that. So there's a lot of key pieces. There's going to be guys that you're going to hate to see go. There's going to be guys that you love to see come back. There's going to be a guy or two here or there in recruiting that maybe stands out in the spring. I say all this to say there's got to be really good. I don't want to say hype, but more so optimism for what this defense could be in 2026. And overall, I feel like the Mayo Bowl, not to base it off one game, but I feel like that game against Wake Forest, who's not really that bad of a team, Um, I I feel like it could be a big moment for Mississippi State. Win or lose the bowl game, if you can just have a good defensive performance, it'll set the tone hopefully for the offseason and going into 2026.
I do agree. Like, I think the bowl game is a chance to make, like, you're right. Can this be a hint of what the defense is going to look like next year? And Arnett's not calling the defense. It's going to be, why am I blanking on his name? Safeties coach, Matt Barnes. He's going to be the one calling the defense. So they're still going to be running
Right.
essentially the same type of scheme that they were running the last few games. But it's an opportunity for a lot of these guys to have a breakout game. And, like, Woodson's not going to be out there because he was done for the year. But could another defensive lineman, can we get a dominant game from Trevion Williams or from Jaray Bledsoe? Can Tyler Lockhart show another big-time game to, like, oh, yeah, man, that's why Mississippi State did everything in their power to get him to ultimately sign with the Bulldogs on signing day?
Yeah.
Do you have a young corner come out and put together an impressive game? You have questions about cornerback next year because, well, again, we don't know if Kelly Jones is back for sure. Do you have a young safety who makes plays? Because I know I laid this out with Jerron Manning, like, hey, we think we can get him back. We don't know if we're going to get him back. So it's a big opportunity to make a statement about what this defense could be going into next season. And if all of those stars align and you get everything to work out, so Whitson, it's approved. Jerron Manning gets another year. Isaac Smith definitely comes back. Kelly Jones comes back. And then everything else I've said. And look, you're right. There's probably going to be guys hit the portal. Like, that's just a part of it. And you're probably going to end up losing somebody on either side of the ball that you don't want to lose. You hope you don't. We're not predicting that, but it's just the odds are – it happens to everybody. That's just college football these days.
Yeah.
But if all of those things align, and then everything else I laid out for what you could potentially have coming back, I think you go into this portal season, which the portal opens now in a couple of weeks. I think State's like 3 pieces away from you're talking about a really solid group, at least a starting defense. Number one, like they got to get a big-time edge rusher. Like, that's a big-time thing they're going to have to get. And I know Whitson looks like a guy who could be that pass rusher, which we did have a question here from Trey. Will Whitson plays the defensive spot that Crumedy played or the stand-up Sam spot that we played? I think he'd be in a spot like what Crumedy did. Crumedy, they would kind of move him both inside and out. And I think with Wheat, it's kind of the same way, kind of playing as a 5-tech, where if they want to move him inside to like a 3-tech or a 4-eye, they can do that as well, like playing just inside the tackle or just outside the guard. But I think he might be a little bit more or they could get him head up on a tackle or just off the edge. I think that's probably where you're going to see Whitson, but I think it'll be hand in the dirt. I don't think it'll be sort of the stand-up edge spot that we have like a Tyrus Wheat. That spot, though, is where I think you got to go find somebody. When I talk about finding a strong edge rusher, I'm thinking of the Sam linebacker and Zach Arnett's defense. Because I think that, like, a guy like Tyrus Wheat, who was obviously so effective for State when he was here, but that's the role that you were hoping of Malik Silla this year, which they called it the Jack linebacker in Coleman Hutzler's defense. You were hoping that he would explode into that. Brandon Jennings would take a big step forward. And it just never fully happened. You need someone who's coming off the edge in that stand-up spot that consistently can get pressure and be a disruptor in the backfield. They have to find a player like that. Could Micah Nickerson get there year one? I think that's a guy who's got to put on quite a bit of weight, probably needs to hit the weight room and get developed a little bit. Still very raw talent. Again, Tyshawn Willis, again, another deal. Like, it might take a little bit of time there. But if they can go and in the portal find an edge rusher who for sure you're confident that guy's stepping in and going to be a big-time impact player, like, I think you have to go out and find that. And I was hoping that 247 would have, like, the edge position designated. Oh, they have a few. So, like, Adam Trick from Miami of Ohio is listed as the top edge in the portal to this point. Tyler Thompson out of UNC, Javion Hilson out of Missouri, L.A. Jesse Harold out of Florida State. I'll be honest, I know none of these guys. I'm just naming names here. But you got to go find someone who can play that type of role because you got to get pass rush. You got to have it. You got to be able to set the edge. That's the other thing. They couldn't set the edge. The reason teams kept spamming outside zone at them is because they knew, hey, man, Mississippi State can't set the edge. Like, they can't bottle this thing up at all. We can just run right around them. So you got to have somebody who can do that. Number two, you got to find at least one starting caliber corner. Because now, obviously, if you lose Kelly Jones, you got to get multiple. But assuming you get Jones back, one other guy opposite of him. They don't have to be as dominant, don't have to be a big-time player, but can you have someone that is just a good corner opposite of Kelly Jones? Like, that's something they're going to have to do. I know Mississippi State apparently is already in the game for a kid out of Iowa State at that position. Like, yeah, like they're going to have to find a way to make that happen. Jay Crawford transferring out of Auburn. Mississippi State want to pay up and get him to come make the move. That was a really good player for Auburn this season. Like, whatever it is, like, you got to find another corner who can step in and just be a solid starter opposite of Kelly Jones if you get Kelly Jones back. But we're talking pie in the sky if everything aligns for Mississippi State here again. I keep hitting this point because I know all of this could very quickly be old takes exposed if all this goes poorly for State. But you got to get a big-time edge rusher. You got to get at least one starting caliber corner. And then I'm just going to say one more disruptive defensive lineman. I won't even say necessarily nose tackle, defensive end, whatever. I need someone that I can put on that defensive line that I think is going to cause problems. Because I do think there's room for some of the guys already coming back on the roster that I talked about as depth pieces with Williams, Calvin Dinkins, Bledsoe, DJ Reed. Like, any one or two of those guys could take a step forward to be a starting caliber player next year. You got to find at least one more guy you trust, defensive line. We can put him out there, and he's going to be a disruptor. If you hit on those pieces and then everything else talked about, I think then you just fill a couple more holes with some solid options, and I think you're looking at a really solid defense. Because, look, they're going to need more than just, I said, one strong edge rusher, one disruptive defensive lineman. They're going to need multiple at those spots. They're probably going to want to sign multiple corners, whether Kelly Jones comes back or not, because you need bodies in that room. They're going to have to go out and sign safeties, whether they get Jerron Manning, Isaac Smith back or not, because they're losing so many guys out of the safety room. But I don't necessarily need you to go get a bunch of elite players at all those positions. If they want to come to Mississippi State, awesome. But if the price tag is right and they want to come be Bulldogs, for sure. But I think if you can hit on those three key spots, edge rusher, corner, and then defensive, just a disruptive defensive lineman, and then everything else clicks, man, I think there's a chance Mississippi State's defense takes a big step forward next year. I'm not saying it'll be a great unit, a dominant unit that can just single-handedly win them games, but I think it could be a pretty good defense that, assuming you take a step forward offensively as well, you could end up being a really good team. I'm really kind of sneaky excited about what State's defense could be. And this is stupid that I've gotten myself excited because, again, there's so many conditional things that have to align for Mississippi State. But I think some of those pieces are in place where, again, if a few things work out, I think we're potentially talking about Mississippi State having a really good defense next year.
I hope that, and I haven't really looked at, because it's not quite time, but the 2026 schedule. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a future episode and all that, but we went 5-7 this year. We got an invitation. We're playing Wake Forest in a bowl. Okay, get a 6th win. Maybe we get an 8th loss if we lose it, whatever. You're hoping that if this defense really does improve like we think it should in 2026, I mean, let's say it keeps you in a couple more games, man. I mean, are we looking at a 7-win team, 8-win team? Maybe not 8 wins, but I would think, man, you don't have to worry about your eligibility for a bowl. You could just get comfortable at 6-6 or 7-5, and hey, man, you're there. Again, I haven't looked at next year's schedule completely, but I mean, if this unit on defense, and then we talked earlier about quarterback and everything, basically you bring it all together, this is a team that next year, I mean, they could be dangerous in the SEC and probably just in college football, right?
For sure. This bowl game, win or lose, if Kamario Taylor goes out and has a good game, and then you have some young guys on defense or some guys that you know are coming back on defense, make some big plays, show you some flashes, and you get a solid defensive effort, I don't care if you lose. If all those things happen, and then you go into the portal and you start landing some quality pieces on that defensive side of the ball, obviously you got to get the offensive lineman too to help fully get the offense together. I'm going to be excited. I'm going to think this team could have a really impressive season next year. And you're right, make noise. And look, the schedule is going to be tough, but that's just life. So yes, 7+ wins, 8+ wins potentially. Like, this bowl game is a big chance to get momentum. We'll obviously talk more about that, next week as we get into the bowl preview type stuff. But this was something I started thinking about today. the stars may be aligning for State's defense. Again, a lot of things have to go right. I keep repeating that point because I fully recognize none of this is set in stone. 1 week from today, my tune could be completely changed if we find out a bunch of things just aren't going to work out for whatever reason, or we get done with the portal cycle and State whiffs on a bunch of spots, and then all of a sudden, again, we're right back to being negative. But right here in this moment, I think State is, if they can have a few things click and then land a few pieces in the portal, I think there's a path to field a really fun defense in 2026 and take a big step forward on that side of the ball.